Hey guys, welcome back. We are talking about recovery today. It's going to be day 3 in our recovery series. We had our lecture, we had our in-facility day 1 activity day, and this is day 2 and our final day of talking about recovery. So here we go. Just to keep the ball rolling, let's talk about self-myofascial release. So with self-myofascial release, it's our opportunity to do some self-massage. And aside from just trying to get our muscle fibers and that deep tissue a little bit happier, myofascial release, and what we're talking about is we're talking about taking sort of that shrink wrapping that surrounds our muscles and sometimes gets sort of bound up. And we're talking about unleashing that a little bit so that our muscles can actually work a little bit better underneath that fascia. And if you have no idea what the heck fascia is, you're probably not alone. And a good example of it would be if you ever do any cooking and maybe your chicken has sort of like that silver sheen over the top of it, that's what fascia is, and it just sort of separates our muscles from the surrounding inner workings of our body. So it's a very strong tool, and sometimes we have to be kind of aggressive on it to get it to give in and do what we want a little bit, but we have so many options for it, and if you don't have the resources or the time or whatever it is for a masseuse and getting massages on a regular basis, a small investment of either a few dollars into a toy, I'll go over some of the toys that I have in a moment, a small investment into some little piece of equipment, and a small investment of your time can have a big payoff. So that's self-myofascial release. And let's kind of jump into some of the toys we have. So we've got standard foam roll. I hear that I've heard of people using wine bottles. I wouldn't recommend that. I don't have any experience with it. But if you're doing that and it kind of like breaks and cuts your femoral artery or something, I don't want anything to do with that. A roll stick. This puppy is pretty nice. Lacrosse ball. I'm going to say bang for buck. That lacrosse ball is the best thing that we're going to find or use. The Thera cane. Right there, you get those tough spots. Ooh, very nice. This is a BF gun. A Theragun is a more popular brand. And you just take that puppy and you put on some muscles that aren't feeling too good, and everything is better. And this is a similar item. Has some vibrating. Also comes equipped with some infrared lights. So that was a BF gun, and this is Home Medics or Homedics. So for my own self-esteem, I'm gonna say it's called Homedics, not Homedics. So that equipment was all, except for the lacrosse ball, that equipment is all designed for this process of just basically recovery work and rejuvenation, but just getting creative as well. So if you're at a gym, a weight room, whatever it is, you've got a barbell. Let's say you've got a quad strain or a hamstring strain. Barbell mashing is just an easy way to get after your muscles. Work. And the nice thing about this heavy old barbell is I don't actually have to push down or do very much, so I can just kind of let the weight of the barbell do some work. So you can do upper body mashes, lower body mashes. It's not the most flexible tool in the kit, but it's at every gym and it works, and it's a little bit different. So keep it in mind. All right, so those are some toys that we might have. And how would you use them? What is your strategy gonna be? You may want to consider your timing. I know that I like a little bit of SMR, self-myofascial release, a little bit of it before activity, and I know that a lot of my athletes do as well. But it's not really appropriate to do just before activity. So in a perfect world, you would maybe do some SMR, and then do some more dynamic stretching afterward, and some more like activation and potentiation work after that. So if you're going to do it beforehand, before some activity or competition, you want to do it maybe 15 or 20 minutes away, and then get some more active time in prior to maybe some competitive or high output efforts that might come up around the corner. And then this is pretty great to do right after a lift. It's going to promote that tissue release. Now you got to keep in mind that when your tissues are very warm, they're already going to be pretty mobile and pliable. And so is it the best time to do this? It's not too bad. It's probably going to be pretty good. So maybe a small cool down into your foam rolling, but really what it's going to do is it's going to help usher extra blood into those areas that maybe you're feeling it, and it's going to boost recovery. Is it going to have the effect on the fascia, on that sheath around the muscles that we want during when the body's temperature is very high? From what I understand, not as impactful as if we do it maybe when we're just a little bit colder. So that's just something to keep in mind. And so when you're actually performing these activities, how much time should you spend on it? I've heard a dozen different philosophies and scientifically backed theories on this, and I would say that you want to do it until you feel a little bit better. So for some people that might be like 1 minute, for other people that might be 30 minutes. So sometimes we get into such bad situations that it's going to take multiple weeks of self-care to even make a dent in what's going on with the body. So I don't have a perfect outline for how long to be spending on things. When you're actually rolling something out, I would recommend only picking on a muscle for about 30 seconds to a minute. And if you find some hot spots, kind of live on that hot spot for several seconds, maybe going back and forth slightly, and then leave that hot spot, work the surrounding tissues, and then come back to that hot spot. And what we're really trying to do in theory is irritate that enough to cause an influx of blood flow to that space that might help it heal. And then if there's any binding going on with the fascia to the surrounding muscular tissue or the underlying muscular tissue, what we're hopefully doing is maybe undoing some of that binding, and when that goes away, that would allow the muscle to basically do its job better. How intense should we be going? Not very. You kind of want to hurt good, but I would say a lot of times I'll explain it as like a 6 or a 7 out of 10 on how intense it should feel. And for a lot of people, they want to, they're extremists and they figure more is better. But if you're doing it to the point that you're like grimacing and you're hurting yourself, you're probably running into something called muscle guarding. And so if you've ever, it's like when we get something in our eye and we want to like cover it up and grab at it, and other people are, maybe your mom or somebody offers to like look in your eye, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, and they want to look in your eye, and you're protecting it and things like that. We kind of do the same thing with our muscles when we get hurt or when there's a strain. Is the muscles kind of tense up around it and they protect it and they don't want anything else kind of messing with it. So if we have like a hamstring or a quad that's bothering us and we are being kind of cruel to it with our SMR technique, it's probably going to tighten up and like retreat back into its shell a little bit more and guard itself. So we don't want ourselves to the point of that muscle guarding effect. And I went over it in the last video, but two great texts that are going to explain and display some strategies for self-care, especially the SMR, would be Desk Bound and Becoming a Supple Leopard by Dr. Kelly Starrett. And then we're going to kind of go through some different strategies here. Yeah, so let's get started. So I'm going to start by using a roll stick, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on the roll stick. A, because I don't, I'm scared that you guys are just going to be watching me roll out, which is weird. And B, I don't know how many people have roll sticks. So if you don't have a roll stick, even like a simple PVC pipe. So if you have like a simple PVC pipe or a broomstick, and if you bend or break your broomstick, don't come crying to me about it. But even like a normal pipe, this is nice because they have individual little nodes on here that will rotate. But even just like a fixed pipe, you can rotate the pipe in your hands. When I worked with the Arizona Rattlers in 2014, we had one of these, and then we just had because the budget, we had wooden dowels, and so instead of rolling people out with one of these, I was just working a wooden dowel back and forth, and the guys appreciated it, and they said it helped and it made them feel better. So sometimes you just got to get resourceful. But if you happen to have one of these roll sticks, or there's Tiger Tails, there's a few brands out now. You could even use a rolling pin, maybe go into the kitchen and grab that rolling pin, that family heirloom that grandma passed down. So if you've got a rolling pin or a broomstick or an actual roll stick, here's kind of how I go about it. And I'm gonna go through my hamstring here. So now when I'm rolling myself, I don't really follow this protocol just because I can sense and feel what's going on a little bit better. But when I'm teaching other people how to roll themselves, or if someone requests that I roll them out, here's what I do. I start off very light with what I would describe as just touching the area with the roll stick, and this allows the athlete to kind of like feel it out, make sure that the muscle's not too sensitive, and also to get comfortable and get into position, things like that. So I'm going to touch the area for a little bit, and then I'm going to crank things up a notch, and I'm going to start to brush the area. So I went from like sort of like a touch, which I would consider like a 2 out of 10, to sort of a brush, which I would consider like a 4 out of 10. And then I'm going to go to crush. And when I go to crush, I'm really only going to like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Because remember, much more than that, we might end up irritating the muscle, or the muscle just might end up practicing self-guarding, in which case we're not going to get a whole lot of benefit out of that either. So on that crush for a little while, I know a smaller implement, you may not just work that same muscle ridge over and over again. You might work your way over and kind of pick on over here, over there. You might change the angle of your stroke a little bit. And then once I'm done crushing, I'm going to flush. And with that flush, I'm going to drop it back down to like a 3 or a 4 out of 10, but I'm going to speed it up, and I'm just going to try to push everything towards the heart. So wherever I am on the body, whatever side of the body I'm aiming upward and trying to get any fluids going back towards the heart. Because as I push those away, I'm going to reel in new fluids back behind them, and that's going to help the healing process, in theory. Let's see. So that's our roll stick, and that's my little made up way I remember how to do it is I go touch, brush, crush, and flush. So take it and use it if you dare. And then with foam rolling, let's see, it's 2020 now. I didn't see a foam roll till about 2006. I was at Bally Total Fitness and I had these big old honking like white, soft white foam rolls, and somebody taught me what it was, and it seemed like it was great, but nobody else was really using it, so I'd use it here and there. But sometimes you get scared that why is nobody else using this? I think it's so great, but no one else is using it. What's the deal? And then obviously it's soon afterward became popular. So we probably all have done it, seen it, or have one or two of them laying around the house. If not, I would encourage you all to get them. Here's mine. Let's see if I can. And this one, the label on the inside says fitness gear. And I like this one. It's got sort of like the PVC, like rigid innards to it, and then just like a little like ribbed like rubber outing. And I've had it for a few years, and it has like no wear and tear on it whatsoever. So if you guys are thinking about maybe investing, fitness gear is like the most generic name I've ever heard in my life for workout equipment, but maybe they know a thing or two. But let's see here. Can you guys see me? All right, I'm gonna kick that camera back down just a little bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna do some quick rolling. I think you guys don't need to watch me do a self massage, but I'm just gonna go through a series so at least you have one series that you know that you can use if and when the time comes that you can use it on yourself or on others. Okay, so my series would be upper back. As the individuals are doing that upper back, I'm going to instruct them to either go arms across the chest or arms out to the side. And the goal there with that arm position is to get their scapula flush to their back so that they can access more muscle. So arms outside or across the chest. And again, about a minute, if I'm leading a big group, I'd give them about a minute. If they want to take some extra time on their own at a later time, that's good, they can go for it. So about a minute there. I'm going to move it down to the lower back. And I've done some articulation in the past, and sometimes it feels really good and sometimes it irritates the spine. So I've kind of quit coaching people to do some extensions or some joint manipulation on the big old foam roll. Now if you have a peanut, which is two lacrosse balls taped together, that's a smaller surface that's going to encourage less like hyperextension. So with the big foam roll, I've kind of gotten away from any extension movements with the spine. Or if I do them, I'm going to coach them to not try to touch their shoulder blades to the ground back behind them while their butt is on the ground in front of the foam roll, that kind of thing. So maybe I'll have them go back just a little bit, but not being very aggressive on that. So we went upper back and then lower back. Then I'd go to glutes, and I'd go figure four glutes, and I like that figure four style because it helps pre-stretch the glute, and it just gives you access to a little bit more of that muscle, and you basically just instantly feel a little bit more, especially like up on your high backside where that piriformis is. You get a lot of moans and groans from the crowd when people start rolling that puppy. And then hamstrings. A lot of times I'll say to kind of line up that that inside of that foam roll with sort of your butt crack basically. That way you're going to get big range of motion. And some people, if they want more intensity on their hamstring foam roll, they'll come off to the edge there, and then that increases your pounds per square inch, and it instantly like drives up the intensity of the foam rolling. Another thing I'll do with this hamstring rolling is I'll encourage them not just to roll with the toe up, but to rotate the toe inward and to rotate the toe outward as well. So that way we're accessing more of the tissue. And also you got to keep in mind that the hamstrings is really 3 different muscles, and so they don't all sit directly underneath the thigh, is you have to kind of go out to the sides a little bit to access them. So your biceps femoris is right underneath, and your semitendinosus is on the inside, your semimembranosus is on the outside, I believe. I might have those sort of reversed there. But again, I'm going to kind of change the angle that my toe's sitting at and try to access the inside or the outside. Neighborhood of a minute on that space as well. I used to foam roll my IT bands. I used to have IT band issues. I would get overtraining issues and I'd get patellar tendinitis, and I'd really feel it laterally where that IT band kind of comes across the side. Here's why I've stopped foam rolling IT bands. The IT band is what's called an aponeurosis. So it's like a tendinous sheath of tissue as opposed to a big like fatty piece of muscle. Or excuse me, a big like, not fatty, but a big fat piece of muscle. So when we roll it, gosh, it really hurts. And it hurts like it's doing something productive. But because it's so tendinous and so it has so little like contractile muscle tissue in there, I've gotten away from that. So I'll tend to, instead of rolling my IT band, now my theory is, my logic is that I'll roll the more muscular spaces around it and hope that that helps the IT band. So that's kind of where I'm at with the IT band. For my quads, kind of like I do for my hamstring, is I'll offset it. So I'll put that edge kind of right on the inside of my thigh, so that I'm not going to have maybe 2 thighs on there at a time. And this really allows me to actually, I'll get in my hip flexors just a little bit at the top there. And this quad has so much muscle and it's so long. Sometimes I'll do an upper quad roll, and sometimes I'll do a lower quad roll as well. So then I might be spending a couple of minutes on this quad. Another thing that might extend how much time you're spending on the quad is you can play around with leg straight versus leg bent. And the leg bent is going to lengthen the quad, and you're instantly going to get a little bit more sensitive because of that. And again, just like the hamstring, how you want to have the toe up, the toe in, the toe out to help access more tissue, you're going to do the same thing with that quad. And it's pretty easy to rotate that leg around. So it's just a simple, easy way to attack it. Calves are pretty easy to do. You can go 2 at a time if you're feeling kind of sensitive, or throw one over the other and basically just get in there. And again, same thing is you can kind of access different tissue with different angles there. And that foam roll does not always have to be rolling basically like perfectly perpendicular to whatever limb you're on. It's okay to also take angles and brush basically at different ways across those muscle tissues. And I think you're going to feel that that's going to be beneficial. So these are basically sort of the big dogs that I would really focus on. Also, your lats are kind of like I don't know what the opposite of a crowd favorite is, but basically everybody hates rolling their lats. It's pretty sensitive, it's kind of awkward, but if you actually start doing it, you'll feel how beneficial it is. And for me, my lats are always really tight, so this is something I should spend a lot more time doing that I don't. But just try it out and enjoy. So that's a little bit of everything. We did not hit the adductors. We didn't do, you can foam roll your shoulders with this thing. If you want to get into like a kneeling position down on the shoulder, you can take it up and put it up against a wall and do several of the movements or other variations. Just by leaning into this, and then this would be up against a wall. So good tool. You can use them for like improvised sort of like ab wheel, ab rollout movements. I like this hollow one especially because I'll put it around a barbell, and if I have a short athlete, so I'll do my RFE squats with my foot on a bench at 6 foot. That fits me at 6 feet tall. That fits me pretty well. But if I have a shorter individual, having a foam roll that is hollow allows me to I'll slide that over the bar, and then I'll put that bar somewhere in the rack that's below a bench height, and then that lifter has something that's like appropriate for them to work off of, and you don't have to buy like a little RFE stand, which they make and they're nice, but it kind of, if you have athletes that are going to work with dumbbells and you can put this around a bar in the rack, it works pretty well. Now if they're going to want to use a barbell, then you're shooting yourself in the foot. Alright, so we foam roll a little bit. Again, back to that lacrosse ball. Everything I just did with the foam roll, I could pretty much do with my lacrosse ball. We're gonna spend more time on my upper body with this thing, but if I was foam rolling on the ground, I could also really isolate my hip flexors. I could really isolate my piriformis, and you can actually isolate your psoas major as well. So lacrosse ball, like $3 if you don't have one laying around the house. I would highly recommend / challenge you to get one. So the nice thing about that lacrosse ball, we can just work, I'll go left hand, right pec. We can just kind of work that upper body again. So a quick and easy recovery session, especially if you're on the lacrosse team and you have these available after practice. There's really no reason to not do this for a whopping like 5 minutes, and you could even be walking around and really kind of supercharging your cool down while you're doing this. So we can go up, down, side to side, little circles, whatever it is, but I would go on that pec major, pec minor, you can come in by the sternum, go out by the armpit a little bit, out to the delts, so that anterior delt can reach it there. Now if you're not too mobile, like my mobility is kind of struggling a little bit, that offhand can just come up here and assist with boosting mobility a little bit and help kind of get us to a different angle. And again, once we're getting kind of over onto that lateral delt, it's okay to do it kind of self or whatever, but it's not bad if you've got a wall nearby. You just go put the ball against the wall and you basically just kind of do the twists right up against the ball, and it feels pretty good. And you can kind of get to the backside here. Sometimes I'll have my athletes sort of face one another and put, they've got the ball in one hand and their offhand is going to be on the shoulder of their buddy, and they're going to take that ball and they're going to kind of dig back in here where that lat is, that rear delt, that tricep, and I just have them kind of pick on that whole area. So it's goofy. It gets athletes like totally in each other's personal spaces, but it actually hits a space that needs some TLC. So once we're done with the delts there, I'll go up on the traps. Don't want to go too close into the neck, but just on the traps there, front and back, side to side, all that good stuff. And then another thing we can sort of take care of is our hands and feet. So the hands, just rolling right there. I think about our hands and feet. is we have a high concentration of nerves, muscles, and bones in both of these spaces, and yet we're rarely taking care of our hands and our feet. And so a couple of minutes with a ball is like, it's not asking for a whole lot for these spaces on our body that are always doing something, and we're always relying on the hands or the feet to kind of get us around and get the job done, whether we're taking notes in class or throwing a baseball or whatever it is. And you can go the ball between the hands, you can put the ball on the ground and roll the hand out like that. And with the feet, not only are you going to sort of boost recovery of your archways and all that musculature that's down there, especially if you're a running athlete or you're basketball, tennis, cheerleading, whatever it is. If you operate on your feet, but you're never taking care of them, you're not being very nice to them, are you? But on top of all the benefits that might come from just being nice to your own feet, there's a nerve that runs from your lower back down into your feet. And I'm not thinking of it right now, but basically what's going to happen is, as we're rolling, as it is often the case, there's sort of a reverse feedback loop on that nerve. So sometimes while you're rolling the feet, lower back pain might go away. So I will put whatever nerve it is in the show notes. A pretty renowned strength coach, Mike Boyle, talks about kind of doing some self-care on his feet. He hot glued some rocks to a board, or he put rocks in a box and he walked on them so that it would stress and put pressure points on his feet. And he said that he never really slept for like 6 hours or more because of his low back. He'd always wake up with a stiff back, and that after he did that rock walking, he ended up sleeping like 8 hours for the first time in years. So that's one story from it. The logic of it kind of makes sense, and I'll also admit that a lot of times that I'm rolling my feet, I will feel a little bit of a adjustment or a give in my lower back that feels good. So based on his story and just what happens to me sometimes while I'm rolling it, I'm a believer. So take that with a grain of salt. And then let's move into a little bit more active care. So whenever we're training or lifting, it doesn't always have to be some like heroic effort with heavy weights or sweating through multiple shirts and shorts. Sometimes we might just go do sort of a lighter lift, and this never really crossed my mind until I was working with the St. Louis Rams. I'm embarrassed to say, I was early on in my career, basically the beginning of my career, and Coach Rock Gullickson, he called these flush workouts. And I kind of cocked my head to the side like, flush, what does flush mean? And he explained that, well, what we're doing is we're not breaking anything down, we're just flushing the body, we're flushing out, flushing the tissues with blood, and we're getting it moving, and we're doing enough to stimulate recovery and to expedite recovery, but not to cause additional breakdown. So that was a piece of advice, and basically a theory and a method that I've borrowed and kept with me. And Coach Matt Winning, who I've talked about before, he encourages keeping these flush workouts 6 hours or more away from bigger workouts. And I would say if possible, we would do that. I like that 6 hour rule. If you are doing a true flush where you're not causing too much muscle breakdown, you're not using a whole lot of energy or calories, that seems like a great rationale. I'm not sure what his rationale is for it, but I like it, and it seems logical to me. Um, but so we would use these flush workouts for players who were, we would use it as like a first workout, maybe after a game in season. Depending on what level you're playing at, that might affect how many lifts you get during that week, whether it's NFL or collegiate or high school. So depending on how many lifts you get, it may be appropriate or it may be something to get cast aside. But if you have athletes who are maybe an injured athlete who can't practice, you might do something like this, but just do a longer version of it so that they're working hard. They're working hard, as opposed to just sitting around watching practice, which is not really good for team morale. And also, sometimes people like to pretend to be hurt. And then if you give them something to do like this, then the injury island or the muscle beach or whatever you want to call it that occurs sort of next to the practice court or the practice field, sometimes that is so hard that it drives people. All of a sudden they're like, I can, I'll figure out, I can play today, I can practice. So like they're miraculously cured all of a sudden. So you don't want to like punish them for being injured, but you also want to keep their conditioning up and help them be in good shape for when they do heal, and then they can go back onto the team and compete. So a flush workout is going to tend to be moderate heart rate. So basically around 60% of their max heart rate. So you're not raising the heart rate up very high at all. You're going to avoid eccentrics. So eccentric contractions are where the most muscle breakdown occurs, and again, we're not interested in that. And it's also can be a big stressor for the central nervous system. So by going eccentricless and by reducing our cardiac output, not always, but sometimes you crank it up, but that would be more of like a cardiovascular workout. So all of a sudden now it's no longer just this in this umbrella of a flush workout. Now it's kind of something different, right? So again, this flush workout is not a breakdown or a big stressor. It's going to look like a training session and look like a workout, but in reality, it is boosting the recovery capability of the individual. So a flush workout may look like this. And I would encourage you all to try this. If you train 6 days a week, or if you train 5 days a week, or 4 days a week, or however you train, you can put in a flush workout on one of your off days. And it's not something that should take a lot of energy. You shouldn't be tired afterwards. You might be a little sweaty, but not much. And I would encourage you to keep your heart rate at about 60% of max heart rate. I would encourage you to avoid eccentric contractions. And I would encourage a full body attack, just so that you can kind of spread the love. And if you think about how pairing upper body and lower body movements, what the heart has to do when it's challenged or stimulated, the heart has to work a little bit harder to send blood to one space versus another space. So if I combine, or if I superset bicep curls with calf raises, on one set the blood's going down below my knee, and on the next set it's coming up out past my elbow. So with limited blood, those aren't the biggest muscle groups on the body, but they're fairly far away from one another, and so it's going to, in theory, it will cause a little bit of an additional cardiovascular stressor. And that's basically like free work, like something like that would basically be like a hack into getting extra cardio in, because you're not actually doing anything additionally stressful to the body aside from just laying out your exercise selection in sort of a funky and creative way. Okay, so an individual might be on the bike for 1 to 5 minutes, and these workouts are probably going to last like 15 to 20 minutes for just a pure flush workout. If it's longer, if it's like a practice substitute, then it tends to get cranked up and be harder and sweatier and longer. So, and then a band row. So remember, we want that concentric contraction, that isometric contraction, and then we basically just like be like relaxed for the eccentric. So that way we're getting work in, but we're not getting a whole lot of eccentric contractions in. We're not causing a whole lot of muscular damage. And you would do however many reps, 15 to 20 there. And again, this is all stuff that would be pretty easy to do at home, at your home gym, on the side of a sport field or a sport court. And just a tape press tricep extension there. Oh, I was doing like normal reps there, so you'd want to go concentric, isometric, relax. Concentric, isometric, relax. Concentric, isometric, relax. So again, 15 to 20 range there. And we could get some kettlebell swings in, or dumbbell swings. And again, getting a little bit of heart rate action, avoiding the eccentrics, and doing sort of a full body effort. And I might do each of those movements, maybe throw in like a plank format or plank variation. And I might do that and do several rounds of that. And if it's a flush workout, maybe it's more like 2 or 3 rounds. And then if it's a practice substitute session, it depends on coach. If you talk to your staff, but it might be a half hour, it might be an hour and a half. You don't want to hurt anybody, but you also, if the whole team is out there training hard, then that individual may not necessarily need a break. Maybe they need to be training hard too, so that they can be prepared to return to play. And then the last thing I want to bring up is Mitch Hochschild is a strength coach and an athletic trainer, and he's involved in sports medicine. And he came up with this protocol, this program called the Core Mobility Series. And I'm going to put a link in below that will get you to a video that will sort of explain a little bit and also demonstrate it. And what this is it's sort of like a supercharged. Now yoga is great, and I'll mention this at the same time, is that yoga is awesome. You could also use yoga for a lot of this, and think about isometrics and getting your heart rate up. Yoga just falls right in that wheelhouse. It's also working on your mobility and your balance. So yoga would be a great recovery activity. Of the several times I've done yoga, it's actually not a recovery activity for me. It's a butt whooping for me. But if you find a nicer one, or if you can convince your yoga instructor to be nice to the crowd, then there you go. That's basically like a gimme for a recovery day, as long as you don't destroy your crowd. So, but with Mitch Hochschild and this Core Mobility Series, there's zero equipment. All you need is a little space on the ground, and it is like a head-to-toe butt whooping that gets your heart rate up. Has great stability focus on shoulders, midsection, hips, knees. It's excellent. So I'm not going to go through and demo it because it's not my program, and also I have a link that he can do a better. There's just a video of him describing it, but I would challenge you all to check it out. read about it just a little bit and go through it, follow along with the video that isn't included. So that is something that's I got to listen to Mitch speak in August of 2013, and I have been, every once in a while I kind of forget about it, and then I remember and I bring it back and I get like kind of hyped up about it. But it's a great little series. Requires little space and no equipment, and I use it in my warm-ups often, but you could use it as a warm-up, you could use it as a workout, you could use it as a recovery block. So that's excellent, and I'm cutting this video short because I just really want to encourage you all to go check that out and give it a shot. And I think that's it for recovery day 2. Awesome. I'll see you guys next time.